Teacher Prix, how can I learn advanced phrasal verbs in English? Any recommendation? Yes, so keep watching this video. Coming up. Hey student, I am Teacher Prix and I'm going to help you talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime in English. Today, we're going to be talking about vocabulary. More specifically, phrasal verbs. Okay, before I dive into the 3 tips that I have prepared for this lesson, the first thing you need to understand is, if you are a pre-intermediate speaker or an intermediate speaker trying to level up your English vocabulary and more specifically, learn phrasal verbs, it is time to eliminate the translation from the process. The more advanced you become, the more advanced vocabulary you study, the more difficult it'll be to translate. And perhaps if you translate the verb, even though you may know it in your language, you will not necessarily know how to use that phrasal verb. Translation doesn't mean you know how to use it. It just means you know the exact meaning. To become a better English speaker and use more advanced vocabulary and even understand more advanced vocabulary, and you gotta stop studying new words based on translation. Okay, I translate, then I learn. I translate, then I learn. No. Instead, what you're going to do is I learn a new word, I get the explanations. Because this will be more helpful to you if you want to speak English more clearly, if you want to have a better use of vocabulary. Because if you think about it, by learning a new word, an advanced word in English with explanations in English, you are improving your English twice more, okay? Like 2 times more, because you are doing all that experience in the English language. So this is something that you must do if you are at the level you are right now watching this lesson. A beginner would not be here. So I'm assuming you are at least a pre-intermediate speaker. So this applies to you. And when I say, oh, advanced phrasal verbs, where do I find them? We're going to talk about that. But here on my channel, I make videos every week. So make sure to check them out. That being said, tip number 1. It's time to read books in English that are not meant for English learners. Yes. Now, I do have recommendations for you to improve your reading skills. So if you are not used to reading, if you have never read anything in your life in English, you gotta check other videos here on my channel where I explain how to read in English, what kinds of books you can get started with. But once you're already doing that, you've read some books in English, you like reading in English, then you can take your reading activity to the next level because you are going to learn a lot of vocabulary, okay? For this tip, you're going to read books that are not meant for English learners. They are meant for native speakers. And basically, you can go on Amazon or on your country's book website, a favorite bookshop that you usually go to, which is online, and you can try to find bestsellers, personal development, business, history, culture, cooking, arts, you name it. Whatever it is that you like, I strongly recommend you do that in English. In my view, okay, I think personal development books are really interesting because of the conversational style. The writer really wants to create an environment where you feel like the author is talking to you. So this is really interesting for English learners because you're going to have an idea of what it's like to listen to a native speaker while you're reading, okay? It's a reading experience. And as you can see here on the screen, in this page, in this book I've been reading, which is The One Thing, okay? Like one thing. And in these 2 pages, look at how many phrasal verbs I'm learning. It's not about like, oh, 10 phrasal verbs. No, that's not how native speakers do it. That's an exaggeration. But here you can find 2, 3 phrasal verbs that are very interesting. So you will begin to see, to notice what kind of phrasal verbs native speakers will usually use. And by doing this as you read information, from a book, it'll be more helpful to you. Now, here is the thing. If you follow this recommendation, I must warn you, you gotta do that slowly because these books are not meant for non-native speakers. I mean, they're meant for everyone, but the language the writers use in those books, they're not worried about us. They don't really care about us. it's true. If your goal is to improve your vocabulary, more specifically phrasal verbs, and learn more advanced phrasal verbs, it would be interesting to read 1 to 2 pages a day, or if you're a very busy person, 1 to 2 pages a week, because you will really need to explore the environment, the context, so that you can better understand the phrasal verb you're learning, okay? Moving on to tip number 2. Tip number 2, we work on listening and vocabulary. So pay attention to what I'm doing here. I am doing a reading and vocabulary practice. Now, tip number 1, we work on a listening and vocabulary practice. As I always talk to you guys here on my channel, the virtuous circle of fluency needs to be activated. That is to say, you need to combine different English skills. Now, as I was saying, watching short interviews on YouTube, preferably with subtitles, because you may not always understand everything you listen to. So for the purpose of this activity, short interviews with subtitles. Why interviews? Movies are great, TV shows are great, but you really get to know an actor or actress or an important business person when they are being interviewed. That's when they lighten up. Oh, okay. They are not the character. They're not playing the character. They are being themselves. Well, it's likely because we're never ourselves in front of a camera. But they are usually talking about different subjects. That's when they are going to speak a little bit more naturally. They are not reading from a script. They're just speaking more naturally. There are no memorized lines for them to say. They are answering random questions. So at that moment, you will be able to pay attention to the choice they make in terms of phrasal verbs. They're going to use some very basic phrasal verbs. They are going to use some very advanced phrasal verbs. So pause the interview, take notes, take a look at the context, if you can understand the context. So even here, we're working on reading because you're listening, then you're paying attention to the phrasal verbs they're using because they will be using phrasal verbs in pretty much all interviews you watch. Then you can pause, read the subtitles, work on reading comprehension. Then you can turn off subtitles and work on listening comprehension. There are so many things you can do with one single material. It's amazing how much work can be done if you know how to follow a good process. I'm always talking about that with my students in my academy, my online program. So this is going to be a very good opportunity for you to identify phrasal verbs in conversations. In pretty much most cases, these will be advanced phrasal verbs. Now, am I against vocabulary books, phrasal verb books? Not at all. I'm going to leave some recommendations here of advanced vocabulary books you can purchase. But honestly, this would be a more, how am I going to put this, a more natural way for you to interact with the language. Okay, you can read books that are written by native speakers where they're not really teaching you English. You can watch interviews where your favorite actors, actresses, or important people in society are speaking, and they are not just saying memorized lines. No, they're just speaking from the heart, speaking at the spur of the moment. So that is a very important thing. And finally, tip number 3. And before I give you tip number 3, this will be very quick. If possible, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Right now we have about 175,000 people, and I'm really looking forward to reaching 200,000 subscribers. I would really appreciate. But tip number 3 is put into action, okay? And here you can do this by following the 2 first steps, or you can include a new practice here. Here on my channel, every week, during most weeks, I often bring phrasal verb lessons. And when I bring those phrasal verb lessons, I usually get those ideas based on the books I'm reading, based on the movies I'm watching, based on the interviews I'm watching. That is to say, I'm always trying to bring phrasal verb lessons based on what I hear, based on what I see native speakers using. So this is something you can do. Watch some phrasal verb lessons that I create or from other teachers. There are many amazing teachers here on YouTube. But every time you watch a phrasal verb lesson, this is the tip actually, you have to put the lesson into action. It is time to act. So you are going to practice creating 1 to 3 examples with the phrasal verb you're learning. And then we can go back to tip number 1 and tip number 2. Okay, I read 2 pages and I learned 2 phrasal verbs. Amazing. All right. Action. Tip number 3. I'm going to create 1, 2, 3 examples with the phrasal verbs I'm learning. That is a more productive practice. Do you really want to learn advanced phrasal verbs? So I'm showing you here how to study them so that you can improve your vocabulary range, okay? That's very important. Oh, but teacher, what if I have problems creating my examples? What do I do? This will happen. So what I like doing whenever I get stuck and I don't know how to create an example with a new word I'm learning or an expression or a phrasal verb, it happens. I look for inspiration. Guys, basically, I go on Google and I type the phrasal verb I want, or, the verb or the adjective. And I put the symbol plus, sentences, examples of sentences, examples of phrases. Google is a very smart search engine. So it is going to give you the results you're looking for. You will see how many amazing sources you will find of websites giving examples of phrases with the word you searched. So this is a very good way for you to get inspiration. Maybe you don't know how to create your own example, so this would be a very productive way to do so. Then what I do in those cases is, okay, all right, I got an example, so I'm going to take that example, I'm going to change a few things and create mine. So you can start doing that. You catch one example, then you change a few things, make it more realistic, more connected with your life. And there you have it. It'll be easier for your brain to connect with that new word. Guys, follow these recommendations that I'm giving you here in this lesson, and I am absolutely sure you are going to learn more advanced vocabulary, especially phrasal verbs. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Make sure to subscribe. Other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye!